The strange thing about happiness is that you don't notice when it quietly leaves the room. For most of my life, I thought I understood it. I thought happiness was something you built, something you earned after enough years of hard work. My name is Daniel, and I'm 82 years old, and it took losing my wife after 57 years of marriage for me to realize that I had misunderstood happiness almost my entire life. When you're young, you believe happiness is somewhere ahead of you. It's in the promotion you're chasing, the house you're saving for, the life you're trying to build. At least that's what I believed when I was a young man in my 20s, standing in a small kitchen with peeling paint, promising my new wife that one day things would be better. Her name was Margaret. She had a quiet laugh and a way of looking at you like she already knew what you were thinking. We didn't have much back then. Our first apartment was barely bigger than a garage. The heater barely worked in winter, and when it rained hard enough, water would drip slowly through a crack in the ceiling and land in a pot we kept on the floor. But Margaret didn't seem bothered by any of it. She used to sit at the tiny table by the window in the mornings, drinking her coffee and humming softly while the sun came through the glass. Sometimes I'd rush past her on my way to work, already thinking about the long day ahead. Back then, I believed happiness was something we were working toward. I thought those mornings in that little kitchen were just the beginning of a better life that hadn't arrived yet. So I worked. I worked long hours, then longer ones. I told myself I was doing it for us, for the future, for the life we deserved. Margaret never complained, not once. She packed my lunch every morning. She kissed me goodbye at the door. When I came home late, she would still be awake, sitting in the living room with a book resting in her lap. She'd look up and smile in a way that made it feel like I hadn't been gone all day. We had 2 children eventually, a boy and a girl. The house got bigger, the furniture got nicer. My job title changed a few times, and each time it came with a little more responsibility and a little less time. I remember telling myself that once things settled down, I would slow down. Once the mortgage was paid, once the kids were through school, once the next promotion came through, there was always another once. Margaret had small habits that I barely noticed back then. Every Sunday morning she would make pancakes, even when the kids were older and barely got out of bed before noon. She would water the plants on the porch and talk to them like they were listening. And every evening, after dinner, she liked to take a slow walk around the neighborhood. She would ask me to come with her sometimes. Just 10 minutes, she'd say, but most evenings I was tired, or I had paperwork to finish, or there was something on television I didn't want to miss. Maybe tomorrow. I'd tell her. Tomorrow became a word I used for decades. Years passed in a way that didn't feel fast at the time. You're just living day to day, doing what needs to be done. But when I look back now, it feels like the whole middle of my life passed in the blink of an eye. The kids grew up and moved away. The house became quieter. Margaret and I found ourselves sitting across from each other at the dinner table again. Just the 2 of us. By then, I was in my late 60s. Retirement was coming closer, and for the first time in a long time, the pace of life started to slow down. Margaret seemed happy about that. She started talking about small trips we could take, little places she wanted to see. Nothing extravagant, just quiet towns, long drives, afternoons, sitting somewhere peaceful. I remember nodding along, telling her that sounded nice, but old habits are stubborn things. Even after retirement, I kept myself busy with projects, repairs, errands that didn't really matter. I had spent so many years chasing the next thing that I didn't quite know how to sit still and enjoy the moment I had already reached. Margaret still took her evening walks. Sometimes she went alone. Then one winter morning, she didn't get out of bed. At first I thought she was just tired, but something in the room felt different. The kind of quiet that makes your chest tighten before you understand why. The doctors used words that sounded calm but felt heavy. Illness, treatment, time. You never believe time is limited until someone says it out loud. The months that followed were slower than anything I had ever experienced. The days were filled with hospital visits, quiet afternoons at home, and long conversations that wandered through memories we had collected over half a century. Margaret didn't seem afraid. One evening we were sitting in the living room while the sun was setting through the window. The light made the whole room look soft and golden. She asked me something I still think about almost every day. "Daniel," she said, "do you remember those walks I used to ask you to take with me?" I nodded. Of course I remembered. She smiled gently and said, "Those are my favorite part of the day. It sounds like such a small thing when you say it out loud. Just a walk around the block. 10 minutes, maybe 15, but in that moment I felt something heavy settle inside my chest because I realized how many of those 10 minute walks I had traded for things that didn't matter anymore. Margaret passed away not long after that. The house became quiet in a way I had never experienced before. Not peaceful, quiet. The kind of quiet that reminds you someone important is missing. For the first few weeks, I kept expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen, or watering the plants on the porch, or calling my name from the other room. But the house stayed still. One evening, not long after the funeral, I found myself standing by the front door around sunset without really thinking about it. I put on my coat and stepped outside. I walked the same path Margaret used to take around the neighborhood. The air was cool, the trees were moving gently in the wind. Somewhere down the street a dog barked and a porch light flickered on as the sky grew darker. It was peaceful. And as I walked, I realized something that had been sitting quietly in my heart all along. Happiness had been there the whole time. Not in the promotions, not in the bigger house, not in the bigger house, not in the years I spent rushing towards some future moment where life would finally slow down. Happiness had been sitting across from me at the breakfast table while Margaret hummed into her coffee. It had been waiting by the front door every evening, asking me to come for a 10-minute walk. It had been in the small, ordinary moments that I kept telling myself could wait until tomorrow. At 82 years old, I finally understand something I wish I had known much earlier. Happiness is rarely the big thing you're chasing. Most of the time, it's the quiet moment beside you that you're too busy to notice. If you're listening to me right now, and there's someone in your life who asks you for 10 minutes of your time, or a simple walk, or a conversation you think can wait until tomorrow, I hope you remember what an old man learned a little too late. Tomorrow has a way of disappearing faster than you think. And sometimes happiness is just a person standing beside you, hoping you'll slow down long enough to walk with them.